water came from the dew and snow of the Shamon. Wow. We go, family. Hurry up. You see that they joke, always say, go and come and make people. Please. פה זה חשוב, המקום הזה הוא. I saw you, we go.
And then we make pee-pee.
I recommend you to make pee-pee now and not before.
Okay, in 1 Kings 12 is basically the story of the splitting of the kingdom. And if you remember, towards the end of his life, Solomon strayed from the Lord because of his many wives, which is a great case to make against getting married to more than one woman. But I digress. The important thing is that because of his disobedience and his moving away from the Lord decided to tear 10 of the tribes away from the kingdom of David, and they became the kingdom of Israel, as opposed to Benjamin and Judah, which stayed in the south, which is where Yadesh Mona, Jerusalem, that area, and southward. So that became the kingdom of Judah. So what happened is a guy named Jeroboam, who was a servant during the time of Solomon, who rebelled, went down to Egypt. He came back after Solomon died, and Rehoboam was made king of Judah. So when the king, everybody was pretty much sick of construction, which, believe me, I can relate to. And so after 40 years of Solomon, they had it with construction. Everybody wanted to retire because construction back then, I mean, if you look at the stones, that's what construction was about, and that is not good work, okay? It's a lot harder than high-tech. So everybody wanted a break and to move into high-tech, and let's give us a break from that. And Rehoboam, when the people approached him, they were like, hey, enough with the building projects. And he was like, oh, I'm going to make building projects. I'm going to make my dad's building projects look like Tinker Toys compared to what I'm going to do. So everybody was like, all right, well, we've had it with you and your family and your construction projects. So who becomes king of the northern tribes but Jeroboam? And then those guys did not get along very well. But Jeroboam, because he's in politics, and politics being what they are, which is how do you maintain control and power over the people, he decides if the northern tribes go down to Jerusalem to worship the Lord, he's going to lose the hearts of the people. They'll go back to the house of David. And then who will be out of luck? Well, Jeroboam will. So he decides, look, what we're going to do is we're going to have alternative places of worship. In other words, you don't have to travel all the way to Jerusalem. I mean, that's a long way away. We don't want to do that. So he sets up 2 alternative altars, and one is in Bethel, which is north of Jerusalem, and one is here. Now, if we had the time and energy, about 10-minute walk that direction, there is an actual where the altar was. I mean, it is the high place, and they made kind of a replica of it so that everybody could see what the altar looked like. But this was the alternative place of worship to going down to Jerusalem. Now, if you follow the 2 kingdoms, when you look at the kings of, if you look at the book of Kings, every king is described as being good or bad, not based on the economy, not based on how everybody was doing, how everybody was eating. It was all based on whether they served the Lord or not. And not one king from all of the house of Israel is named as being a good king. Not one. And all of them say he followed in the sins of his father Jeroboam. Okay, Jeroboam, who caused Israel to sin. Why? Because it was all about my power versus the true worship of the Lord. So there was not one king from Jeroboam onward in the northern kingdom that advocated a return to worshiping the God of Israel. And this kingdom, the northern kingdom, was destroyed about 150 years before the destruction of Jerusalem. So you may think in terms of, let's say, the United States going downhill. And then you're absolutely right. Society-wise, we're not headed in a good direction. But what is it, according to Scripture, that you can learn that preserves a kingdom? As long as there is the true worship of the Lord, you will have a preservation of the kingdom. And when there is not true worship of the Lord, the kingdom will dissolve and fall. So now Judah, what you say, well, Judah also, they had the temple, they had the priests, they had all the worship down there. Why did they, even though Israel fell sooner, why did Judah last another 150 years? Well, they lasted because they actually had a foundation, a true foundation in the worship of God. Now, the problem why they were destroyed is because they thought that the worship items, in other words, the temple and the priesthood and all that sort of thing, they thought that was their deliverance. In other words, they still did idol worship all week long, but then they went and they had their temple worship to kind of rubber stamp, keep things kosher on that end. And you know what? In the United States, we're not far from that. We're going to go to Sunday to our service so that we can worship the Lord and do our thing and all that sort of thing, and do a little V in the box as far as our worship of the Lord. But our idolatry is all week long, and it can include your technology, and it can include your sports, and it includes the workaholics. What do you think a workaholic worships? If he's not worshiping the money that he makes from his work, he is worshiping work itself. So there's a lot of forms of idolatry where we look to the idol to supply our needs. And the idol, unless it's the Lord, is a false god. And that's why you end up with the destruction that ends up happening, even though you have the actual real places of worship that the Lord said he would put his name. But the Lord, once we cease to worship him throughout the week, and all it is a symbol of worship, we end up losing our place and our kingdom and our inheritance. So as you walk through your life with the Lord wants to bring you into an inheritance. He wants you to be fruitful, and he wants you to be all that he has destined you to be. But as long as your idols have precedence in your life, you will never achieve it. the destruction will come, because the Lord is a jealous God. He's still a jealous God. And he won't be second place in your life.